But tonight we must start with what I call the hospital horror, because every day we are bringing you stories on the channel of what's happening across cities and towns in the country. But nothing exemplifies the collapse in a sense of the health infrastructure system quite like the national capital. We thought that the national capital would have the best resources. Instead, hospital after hospital is now sending out SOSs, desperately seeking oxygen supplies. And patients are struggling with hospital beds and families desperately moving from one hospital to another. Our top story tonight focuses on the collapse in a way of the hospital system in the national capital. Take a look.
इसके सिवा मेरा कोई नहीं है। मैं बाइक चला कर रोता हुआ है इसके लिए, लेकिन कोई भी सुन नहीं रहा। इससे कुछ मेरा कौन देखेगा? बेटी सियानी है, एक छोटी है गोद की।
This is the situation in the capital of India, a country that in a matter of days has earned the dubious distinction of being the global leader in daily COVID infections. The national capital's healthcare system lies completely choked, and Aslam Khan is knocking on the doors of LNJP Hospital trying to get a bed for his COVID-positive wife, who desperately needs oxygen.
करा दीजिए सर प्लीज, और कोई नहीं है मेरा इसके सिवा। बेड नहीं है, बेड नहीं है। मैं कहीं भी लिटा के इलाज करा लूंगा। वो बात नहीं है ना मेरे भाई, मुझे बेड नहीं चाहिए। इलाज कैसे होगा बताओ ना, आईसीयू नहीं है ना। अरे तो नॉर्मल ऑक्सीजन तो कम से कम लगाओ, इसकी पल्स भी 65 हो गई है। मैं नापता हर हॉस्पिटल से आ रहा हूँ, माइनस होती जा रही है।
Oxygen is in short supply and COVID-infected patients needing it the most are facing death. Health workers are unable to bear the strain of seeing patients die who just needed breaths of oxygenated air.
If we cannot give them oxygen even, what is the situation? When patient comes to a patient will die.
Shanti Mukund Hospital in East Delhi had to put up a notice stopping further admissions because they could not guarantee oxygen for their patients.
We know they are trying to help, but there is no oxygen, sir. There is no oxygen. We know this. We know, everybody knows it. Even government is trying to help us. But ultimately, oxygen is to be generated and to supplied.
As the hospital starts sending patients, shifting them to other places due to the lack of oxygen, many desperate relatives and attendants getting their own oxygen in hope that they would be able to tide over this current crisis of the oxygen.
Several hospitals are still struggling to replenish oxygen supply.
पेशेंट जो कोविड के आ रहे हैं हमारे पास, वो मैक्सिमम सिक आ रहे हैं जिनको ऑक्सीजन की ज़रूरत है। अगर ऑक्सीजन नहीं है तो ये क्राइसिस है, ऑक्सीजन मिल नहीं रही है, ये क्राइसिस है, और हॉस्पिटल्स वाले बेबस हैं।
Several hospitals also went to the High Court to seek intervention in the matter. Even administrators of big hospitals went on social media sites expressing their concerns and helplessness, asking government to do something.
Delhi, which has now the demand of 700 metric tons, which has gone up at least twice from their usual demand, though the centre has increased the quota, but the sources in the government of Delhi say that it will take at least 2 to 3 days for the situation to normalize. Yesterday, only 90 metric tons of oxygen was supplied to Delhi. The politics continues and lives, most of them unnecessarily, have been lost because of the lack of basic supplies. This is India in the second wave of coronavirus. With camera person Dinesh Lal, Ankit Tyagi in New Delhi, India Today.
Hospitals now send out desperate SOSs for oxygen. I'm joined by a very special guest, Dr. Sangeeta Reddy, Joint Managing Director at Apollo Hospitals, joins me. Appreciate your joining us, Dr. Reddy. And the reason that I have you, I'm going to get several other hospital heads as well today, is because you tweeted at 12:10 this morning. And I put that tweet out for our viewers As I tweet, an oxygen tanker is outside the gate of Air Liquids Panipat plant at IOCL and he is not being allowed inside Haryana. Police are stopping it, not letting the oxygen out of Haryana, need urgent intervention. And you've tagged the PMO, Rajnath Singh, Piyush Goyal, the Ministry of Health and the Haryana Chief Minister. Did it require you to tweet for the government to wake up? That someone like you had to tweet? Has it reached that desperate stage, ma'am?
So, Rajdeep, I won't say it's reached that desperate stage, but I do want to say that a hospital administrator, hearing that there's a problem, knowing they have 2-3 hours of oxygen supply and hundreds of patients depending on them, definitely takes every step possible to get action. And I think that was the reason I realized that, and I think in my 37 odd years of working, I have not done something like this, but I basically felt it's important. I knew that Apollo will get oxygen, but how about all the other hospitals and nursing homes? And I also want to say that whether it was the tweet or the overall scenario, we definitely found, I'm thankful the FICCI chief reached out to Home Ministry. Home Ministry issued an immediate directive. And here I want to kind of paraphrase this. In the current situation, every oxygen tanker has to be treated like an ambulance and allowed to move quickly. And the reason I'm saying this is actually India is not short of oxygen. Over a week ago, the central government, the Commerce Ministry, everybody appealed to industrialists saying, please give your manufacturing oxygen into medical. Even then, despite the fact that the medical oxygen consumption has risen 5-fold from the normal 3,000 tons per day, it's grown 5-fold now. Despite that, India actually has enough oxygen. So the shortage is actually of the tankers and the cylinders. And that's going to take a few days to correct. So in the interim, what we have to do is ensure the highest optimization of the productivity of the cylinders and the tankers. Therefore, if you're moving oxygen, we should optimize. And that was the reason that I tweeted, to find a way to optimize the movement across borders, across every scenario, so that every hospital and every patient gets help. That was the reason. And I do want to thank all the Home Ministry, Health Ministry, everybody swung into action. So,
ma'am, I'm going to say this, that you, of course, you've been a former president of FICCI, you're someone with influence. But think of the average small hospital. Think of a medium hospital in a small town. If interstate disputes in this country are going to prevent oxygen supply from moving from one state to the other, what does one say about our governance? I mean, it reflects mismanagement at different levels.
Which is exactly why I asked for this, for the sake of all hospitals and all patients. Please allow ambulances to move. That was my major request. I think things are slightly better. Let's all, optimize the use of oxygen, enhance the production of cylinders as well as of containers. The Tata Group said that they are importing cryogenic chambers. That's a fantastic thing to do. Many industrial houses are redeploying their manufacturing oxygen. So the situation is going to get tided over. But, it was a situation...
Ma'am, I'm sorry. Ma'am, I'm sorry to intervene. While the situation gets tided over, let's be honest, 72 hours is a long time in the lives of people. People at the moment are struggling. My point is, don't you agree that this kind of emergency yes, ma'am. My point is, what you're saying is absolutely true, that you've got to treat those tankers as ambulances, but this should have been known to the Haryana government or indeed any state government or the centre, and we needed constant monitoring of oxygen supply. It seems that the entire system, including hospitals, have been caught in a way, I won't say unawares, but certainly caught in an emergency situation with the geometric progression of cases. So is it just a supply, is it just the demand that's gone up and the supply has not been met, or a failure to anticipate a crisis?
So I think the rate at which the number of cases is increased is the fastest that we could have ever seen. What took the US 62 days to grow to this number has come in India in only 14 days. This is an unprecedented rise in demand. It is a very difficult scenario, and we all have to work together to come out of it. And we must protect the large hospitals, the small hospitals, but most importantly, every patient and every life. That's what we're here to fight for, together.
I'm going to ask you, therefore, in conclusion, what is the biggest learning for you as someone who's seen the system from inside for several years now? What's the biggest learning from the last few days? What is it that we need to change? Because this could well come in a third wave. This second wave could intensify. What's the biggest learning that we need to imbibe from what's happened in the last few days?
That's a fantastic question. And I think that when we knew overall in India that we had a shortage of ICU beds, we have a shortage of many things, we must think big. We must believe that every life is priceless, and please invest in the healthcare infrastructure in our country. Let this never ever happen to us. That's my biggest lesson. 10 days ago, I ordered 150 oxygen concentrators. Today, I wish I had ordered 1,000. So let us not think small in the context of India. We're a large country. We can and we should find a way to be ahead of everyone else in healthcare. We have the potential to do so. That's my biggest learning.
Right.
So invest in healthcare infrastructure.
I think, right, you've got to scale up and invest in healthcare infrastructure is the big message you're sending out. Let's hope this message now echoes loud and clear to our policy makers. Sangeeta Reddy, Dr. Sangeeta Reddy, for flagging that off through a tweet, putting out an SOS that eventually led, some say, to the removal of restrictions by the Home Ministry. I appreciate your joining us. Let's hope small hospitals also get now their oxygen supply. Dr. Reddy there joining me on the news today. Now, remember, it's not just the national capital. Across the country, hospitals are under serious stress. In Ahmedabad, more than 50 ambulances were spotted waiting outside the COVID hospital there as hospital beds were full. And across the country, that's a similar story. From Lucknow to Bhopal to Mumbai to Raipur. Take a look at this report.
1, 2, 3. We stopped counting at 50. These ambulances outside the Ahmedabad Civil Hospital have patients inside awaiting admission and treatment. There are private cars as well, like this one. The family has come all the way from Rajkot, a journey that covered 200 kilometers and would have taken over 4 hours. They are out of oxygen and awaiting their turn for help.
रात को 12 बजे निकला था गोमटा गांव से गोंडल तालुका राजकोट जिलो 12 वागे ત્યાંથી નીકળ્યા પ્રાઇવેટ ગાડીમાં લેકે આવ્યા બીજું કોઈ વાહન નહોતું મળતું 108 માં વેટિંગમાં બતાવતા હતા 108 નો આવી કાલ બપોરના દોડતા હતા ઓક્સિજન બાટલા લેવા ગયા હતા રાત્રે 12 વાગે મેર આવ્યું તે પછી અત્યારે 6 વાગે અહીંયા ગાડી લઈને આવી ગયા લાઈનમાં ઊભા છે હજી 7 બજેથી ખડા છે સુબહ 7 બજે.
There are many like him, waiting since early morning.
मरीज के बाहर ही ऑक्सीजन लगा दी है और जो है ग्लूकोज चढ़ा दिया है इन मैडम ने, बाकी नंबर नहीं आया. हम
एम्बुलेंस के लिए कितना इंतजार करना?
सुबह 9 बजे किया, रात को 1:30 बजे मिली.
And the hospital staff are doing their best, providing treatment to the patients in ambulances itself. There is fear in the air. Many are grieving. Anger is widespread.
कोई सुनता नहीं इधर. मेरे सामने से मैडम कम से कम एम्बुलेंस में उतारते 2-3 आदमी तो ऐसे ही मर गए. जब तक एम्बुलेंस गेट पे आती है 25-25 मिनट तक तो वहाँ पे एम्बुलेंस पे खड़े रखते, तो फिर एम्बुलेंस गेट के आगे आते ही तो उनको तुरंत सारवार के लिए अंदर ले जाओ ना. अगर आपके पास बेड की सुविधा नहीं है तो आप आगे बोर्ड मार दो कि भाई यहाँ पे सुविधा नहीं है, तो वो लोग दूसरा अरेंजमेंट कर सकते हैं.
रात के 3 बजे से हम यहाँ पे बैठे, रात के 3 बजे से अभी नंबर आया, कितना बजा है?
ये तो कोई बात होती है? ये सी है हमारी गवर्नमेंट, इसके लिए हमने उनको वोट ला के रखा था कि जब हमारे पे मुसीबत आएगी तब हमको इस तरह रहना पड़ेगा। आज इतना कुछ करते हुए भी कुछ है ही नहीं हमारे पास। गरीब इंसान कहाँ जाएगा? है पैसे वाले तो कहीं ना कहीं चले जा रहे हैं, गरीब इंसान 24 कलाक से पड़ा हुआ है।
The situation is similar in several cities across India. The notice at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences in Bhopal says there are no beds available. In Uttar Pradesh's capital Lucknow, beds and oxygen are hard to get. The patients are angry with the bureaucracy. Hospital admission in the state requires a referral from the chief medical officer.
कल सरकार की न्यूज आई थी कि बगैर सीएमओ लेटर के पेशेंट को एडमिट किया जाएगा अगर पेशेंट की हालत क्रिटिकल है। मैं ऑफिस गया, उन्होंने कहा सुबह तो उन्होंने मुझसे मना कर दिया, सर कुछ नहीं हो रहा है यहाँ पे अभी। मैं दोबारा गया, उन्होंने कहा सर मैं ऐसे एडमिट नहीं कर सकता बगैर लेटर के। मैं यहाँ लेटर लेने आ रहा हूँ, यहाँ लेटर नहीं मिल रहा है, बेवकूफ बना रहे हैं।
मैं ये पूछना चाहती हूँ किस टाइप का सीएमओ ऑफिस है जहाँ सीएमओ सिर्फ शक्ल दिखाने के लिए आते हैं, यहाँ तक जाते हैं, रिसेप्शन तक घूम के वापस आ जाते हैं। कोई अटेंड करने के लिए नहीं है, कोई जूनियर नहीं है, कोई सीनियर नहीं है, जिनका ऑफिस है वही नहीं बैठ रहे हैं, तो कैसे हेल्प करेंगे पब्लिक को?
With India recording over 3 lakh cases on Wednesday, the biggest single-day spike ever seen in the world, the coronavirus pandemic has clearly spiraled out of control. The fight against the virus will be long and tough. Many fear the situation across the country could still worsen before it gets any better. With Gopi Manyar in Ahmedabad, Abhishek Mishra in Lucknow, and Ravishpal Singh in Bhopal, Bureau Report, India Today.
Raise then the big questions and widen this to more hospital heads. Why is it taking so much time to fix the oxygen crisis? Why are hospitals facing shortages on every infra issue? Did hospitals fail to plan in advance? Did the surge take them by surprise? Or must the buck stop with the central government and the state governments? These are questions I want to raise. I'm joined by Dr. Dhiren Shah, Executive Director at CIMS Hospital and Vascular Surgeon, Dr. Ashok Seth, Chairman, Fortis Escorts Heart Institute, Dr. Hemant Deshmukh, Dean Seth GS Medical College and KEM Hospital. Thank you all very much for joining me on the show today. I want to come to you, Dr. Shah, because our story highlighted Ahmedabad and the crisis there. Now, this is, of course, the Prime Minister's home state, the Home Minister's home state, and it appears that even the Gujarat model that we've spoken about is cracking. Ahmedabad was being built up as a health city. Why is the health city of Ahmedabad facing such a crisis? What explains the collapse of the health infra system, and what is it that is being done at the moment to resolve it, sir?
I totally agree. The system is getting collapsed. And the reason behind this is this second wave has been more deadly as compared to the first wave. And during the first wave, we were more prepared, better prepared. The government was very well prepared. And there was a lockdown which had given us a time period where we were able to prepare a lot of things. This time, somehow everybody did not anticipated this COVID breakdown, second wave, and nobody had anticipated that this will be too deadly. Unfortunately, it is because of this mutant virus, which is more deadlier than the first virus. The spread is like a wildfire or bushfire spread, and it is spreading like this. So obviously, at this point of time,
the system... So what, sir, if I may ask them, what happened in the last several months in terms of augmenting infrastructure? We thought that the lockdown in the first wave was going to be used to augment health infrastructure, so we were better prepared. Everywhere across the world, people knew there would be a second wave. Did we let our guards down? Did the hospital and the governments let their guards down and celebrate prematurely, Dr. Shah?
I totally, partially and totally agree to that. Because of a slowdown in the month of Feb and part of the March, people thought that we have won the fight against the COVID. But actually we did not, and we were supposed to anticipate this second wave, and we should have been prepared for that. And even there were some, I would say, statements from a lot of bureaucrats saying that we have won this fight against the COVID, and this COVID is now gone out of this country. And unfortunately, second important thing was we could not step up the vaccination program, which we were the front runners in production of the vaccines, and we could not step up. By the end of 2-3 months, we should have been able to at least vaccinate the youth and the people below the 50-60 who are roaming around across the city, across the country. And they are the mainly spreaders, not the people who are sitting in the house who are more than 60 years, 70 years. They are not the spreaders. It is the young generation which is the more spreader of this disease. So I think so. It is. So
you're accepting in a. You're being very honest today. You're being extremely honest in saying we just were not prepared. We let our guards down. But Dr. Seth, you too, Fortis Hospital today also put out an SOS, much like Apollo Sangeeta Reddy did, seeking oxygen supplies for one of your units, saying you had just 4 hours left of oxygen supply. Now, are we to understand that this is mismanaged by the management by the hospitals? Is it that the tanker distribution supply system collapsed, or is it that the governments, both at the state and the center, just didn't anticipate the scale of the crisis?
So let me say, Rajdeep, you said Sangeeta Reddy made a very, very sensible statement at the end. What had she done? And she said that we need to put our infrastructure in order. Well, you know what's happened between the first and the second wave? We escalated the beds. We did a lot of things. We said we had ventilators. We actually said we got beds all over. We surplus beds. It was soft infrastructure. There was never a hard infrastructure put into place. That's sad. We had all the time. And then there was a de-escalation of infrastructure in the midst of euphoria. And that euphoria was as if we'd won the war. It was not just the battle we'd won the war. Corona had been driven away. We are the greatest country. And I think all that didn't help the present situation of callousness, casualness. And the second wave, of course, we talked about it, and the variants and so on. Now, about the oxygen part of it.
No, so who's responsible, sir? Sorry to intervene. Who's responsible for augmenting that infrastructure? The hospitals or the state or the center?
So it's all around. And whether you say it, who's responsible for not noticing this second wave and not preempting it? Everyone. I mean, it is a failure of the public. It's a failure of the leaders. It's failure of you. It's failures of me. It's failure of the virologists, the advisors, the epidemiologists. It's failure of everyone because everything was on the cards. Actually, in the way the second wave came for every country. And it was in cards even 100 years ago when Spanish flu came. It was there in England when the variant came in. It's just that we were lost in many other things, and we are all to blame for it. Where is the COVID appropriate behavior? Everybody had the masks on. We've had super spreader events. Who are they due to? On one hand, they could be due to the leaders, but on the other hand, the public was not necessarily meant to go for it if they wanted it. They didn't want to. So I think we've been callous and careless at every point around, not realizing that we are a 1.3 billion country, one of the most congested countries in the world. If this spreads like wildfire, it would actually spread. And we knew that all the time, but we rather believed that we should be euphoric about everything that had happened prior. Now, you really need to address one more. No, it is at every step. But on the other hand, by the way, the infrastructure is a national infrastructure. Nothing, like I said, private infrastructure is not a substitute for public infrastructure. And if we've got to actually escalate, then everything is escalated through government policies and government decisions. These are not personal issues that my hospital gets better at infrastructure than someone else. Today, when we see dearth of beds all across, I'm saying, why haven't you even put an infrastructure there to actually help a patient find a bed? Why is he going from hospital to hospital, looking for a bed, weeping, crying with his ill relative who may actually die in that 5 hours he wants to find a bed? When we have all this year to create systems, helplines, everything, which could just say, there could be 500 helplines, there could be 1,000 helplines. Forget the app. How many people use an app in the middle of trying to find beds for their patients? They need to just pick up a phone, a soft voice speaking to them, saying, go to this place, there is a bed, I'm ringing up, you'll be taken, and you'll be taken. That's all that they're looking for. They're looking for some place to put their relatives. So systems, by the way, systems and processes are something.
So who runs the systems? Who runs the systems? Who runs the systems? Let's be very clear. All of this, all of this was seen and known after the first wave. Why did we not prepare for it? Did the hospitals fail? Did the state? I come back to it. Someone has to be held accountable.
The buck must stop.
Do I stop it with you as the head of a hospital chain, or do I leave it to the center or the state? Who do I hold accountable if my relative dies today for a lack of oxygen?
Even today, and let me address this lack of oxygen issue. The lack of oxygen, the supplies come in regularly. We're always there. And we, by the way, remember, Rajdeep, different to the last time when we had very few non-COVID patients, we had absolutely we have now 4 times those COVID patients. All those people who did not have treatment at that time are coming back for treatment. In fact, March was our busiest month of non-COVID patients for the whole of year. They're all coming back for treatment. Right. At this time, when we're actually treating non-COVID and COVID patients, and the COVID patients are the ones which are serious, the ones which are getting admitted now, because the mild ones, unlike last year when mild ones also used to be in the hospital, the mild ones are at home, is the moderate to serious ones who are actually in those beds. More oxygen gets needed. We actually therefore went into the problem when the supply side started faltering. And by the way, why did the supply side falter? While the increase in demand happened, and the supplies were there, the reactions were not fast enough. Firstly, the transportation of these is not easy in those cryogenic transportation systems. That's not easy. It takes days for it to come. And then happened the petty politics between the states. That's so sad that in the midst of people dying, we had petty politics. So actually, it's the delays of expectation. We knew when we would finish the oxygen. All of us have a few days supply ahead. But when the transports, when the tankers did not arrive, that's when it started failing. And you know why the tankers did not arrive. Okay. It's not easy to transport. It's not easy. And then there's the petty politics. And by the way, there wasn't a fast enough reaction to it. There wasn't a fast enough reaction to it's something which should have been burning and straight away. It should have been fast enough. And unfortunately, but I know that the situation will sort out because now the reaction is happening. Now it's fast enough and it's already getting sorted out straight away. And that's what Sangeeta said. But our system was also at 2 hours.
Sir, but it is, sir, let me say, sir, I take your point, but the fact is this could have happened earlier. Our emergency response system should have been faster. Dr. Deshmukh, you head one of Mumbai's biggest hospitals and you get a lot of patients across society. It's a public hospital. I want to understand from you, the pressures on you must be even greater. Where is the weakness in the system? Why is it that we have run out of hospital beds, that ventilators are a problem? We thought all of this would be sorted out after the first wave. Is it just the scale of the second wave, or as other doctors are now saying, the lack of preparedness at all levels?
Rajdeep, you have hit the point that we are again and again saying that this is not the second wave, but this is a tsunami wave. And tsunami has compounded the problems not only of the patients, not only of the remdesivir, not only of the plasma therapy, and definitely the oxygen requirement spiraled into tons and tons. Now, the major factor which driven the the demand of oxygen was definitely the high flow nasal cannulas. These are definitely called as oxygen guzzlers. And when you say that high flow nasal cannula consumes a lot of oxygen, probably there was some element of usage of oxygen which was almost necessary to treat each and every patient. So definitely there was a tsunami wave. Definitely the rise in numbers was so astronomical that the demand of oxygen also ran along with the patients. So the supply side definitely faltered. But in the month of October and November, we anticipated that oxygen would be required. Probably the number of cases, critical cases in the city of Mumbai was going down. So we scaled up and doubled the supply of oxygen and built up a storage facility for oxygen in each of the jumbo centers, in each of the major teaching hospitals of Mumbai. And that was a very good move by the Municipal Corporation of Greater Mumbai to erect a lot of big storage facilities for oxygen. Today, I have doubled the capacity of oxygen that I used.
Why, sir, but why then are people running around in Mumbai? So why is it then, Dr. Deshmukh, why is it then people in Mumbai are running around for beds? Why is it that there seems to be a general lack, at least for several days? It's got a bit better in the last 48 hours, but there seemed a moment when it appeared that the system was collapsing. Why was that?
Yeah, definitely, Rajdeep, the system was collapsing. I agree with you. But what had happened is we have established a dashboard for availability of critical beds. And most of the bigger hospitals have only critical beds. What we lack is most of the time the COVID centers or the jumbo COVID facilities that we have erected in the large corners of the suburbs of Mumbai are imbibing a lot of patients who require oxygen. Initially, the requirement for oxygen for mild or pre-symptomatic patients was very low. But right now, we are finding that anybody who is pre-symptomatic or mildly symptomatic are also requiring oxygen. So 1/3 of the facilities, that is the COVID hospitals, have to augment beds to Yes, Rajdeep.
I want to understand this. If I'm a 65-year-old, I don't know how to use an app. I'm struggling with an app. Helplines are not responding fast enough. I dial a number that nobody's responding. What do I do? Me and my wife are both COVID positive. We are in our 60s. We are running around as senior citizens. What do I do, Dr. Deshmukh? Who do I turn to?
Rajdeep, one thing is very clear from the start of the pandemic in March 2020. KM has always opened the doors for any patient coming from any region of the country, the state or the city of Mumbai. And we have never denied admission, at least in KM hospital or any of the major hospitals in Mumbai. We have accommodated them. We have converted normal beds into COVID beds. And the speed at which we were increasing the number of oxygenated beds or ICU beds has definitely not taken on pace with the number of increase of COVID beds. Right now, the requirement is very astronomical. The demand for oxygen has gone up and the patients themselves do not turn up at the first day of the disease or the second day of the disease. Most of the patients are quarantined at home right now. They come to the hospital not on the 5th day or the 6th day, but they come on the 11th day, 12th day, when the cytokine storm has set in, when the requirement of oxygen has gone up. And this creates a lot of problem for the doctors, the hospitals, for the healthcare workers, and for the entire infrastructure that is managing the allotment of COVID beds in the city of Mumbai, Rajdeep.
Okay, let's leave it there because clearly this is a crisis that has exposed failings in the system, and I'm glad to hear that all of you, in a sense, there is at one level an admission perhaps that we were not prepared. I sometimes wonder in this country, why don't we invest much more in public health care instead of investing in places of worship and hospitals, places of worship and statues. We need more hospitals. We need perhaps less places of worship and statues. Invest in public health infrastructure. That's the only long-term solution to the crisis that has engulfed our hospital system. Thank you all very much for joining me.
It's a very, very helpless, यानी मुझे इतना helpless और लाचार कभी फील नहीं हुआ है.
$3.15 lakh COVID cases in 24 hours. World's biggest single-day spike.
आप कोई सुपर हीरो हो या आपकी इम्यूनिटी बहुत अच्छी है और आपको ऐसे कुछ नहीं होगा तो आप गलत फहमी में हो. हम यंग लोगों को देख रहे हैं. I mean, we have a 35-year-old who's on the ventilator.
50% of world's daily cases. And 15% of world's daily deaths.
आपके जो फ्रेंड्स है या कोई भी है उनको बोलो पैनिक में होकर एडमिट ना होए हॉस्पिटल में.
But don't panic.
बहुत सारे लोग जिनको एक्चुअली ऑक्सीजन की जरूरत है उनके लिए हमारे पास बेड नहीं है. डॉक्टर्स और डॉक्टर्स के रिलेटिव्स को भी नहीं मिल रहा है बेड. तो आप सोचिए कि it's an absolutely helpless situation. Please keep yourself very well masked at all times अगर आप घर से बाहर निकल रहे हो.
Mask up now. Together we can win this war.
Okay, take care. I really love you.
Joining me now is that young doctor, Dr. Tripti Gilada, whose emotional appeal has gone viral on the internet. I appreciate you joining us, Dr. Gilada. You virtually broke down while speaking. Is this some anger that has been building up, a sense that hour after hour as young doctors like you are virtually fatigued, I'm sure, by what's been happening? Tell us what explains the emotional breakdown, Dr. Gilada?
I think it's a mix of emotions. It's anger, it's fear, it's an extreme sense of being helpless. And, all these emotions together at such an extreme was something that we haven't experienced before. When I did this video message, it was actually done for a very close group, like for my families and friends. And I thought that I was receiving so many calls every day requesting for a hospital bed, requesting for oxygen, requesting for medicine, things that we took for granted all these years. And suddenly with this disease, we were left so helpless that all that we could say is, I will try. And yet we knew that we were not going to be able to help them. And in this bargain, we are losing lives. As much as we try to save lives inside the ward, there are many more who we turn down at the hospital. And it's a very unfortunate and sad situation we're all witnessing.
Are you just tired? I mean, I wonder, my son is a young doctor and they do night shifts virtually every day at the moment in COVID hospitals. Are you all just tired? Is there a sense of fatigue, or are you just determined to go ahead, come what may?
I think we're not even thinking of fatigue. I think that's something that's totally out of question. I think none of the frontline workers will say we are tired, because we are just faced with this extremely grave situation, and we understand that we will really have to be strong, determined, and tireless and selfless together to just make through this. So I wouldn't say tired at all, but it's definitely a sense of fear of what is impending, with especially with the rising cases. We do not know which direction we are headed. There seems no respite in terms of improving the healthcare infrastructure or drugs becoming available. And the sad part is, this was all something that could have been avoided. We had this entire 1 year. 2020 was different. We did not have enough information about what the virus was, what were the best precautionary measures. We didn't have a vaccine. We are 1 year later in a worse shape. So it's like, what did we do for this entire year?
What's your message then, both to the citizens whom you addressed in that video calling for COVID appropriate behavior like masking, and indeed to our policymakers when you see, for example, large election rallies going on? As young doctors, do you feel angry?
Yeah, I think, it's just a wrong message sent out to the public. If the people see religious gatherings, political gatherings, how do you think they're going to be serious about this? On one hand, we are talking about mask up, maintain physical distance, and all that goes down the drain in one rally. So I think if we really need to make the community or the entire country serious about it, I think it needs to come from the leadership. And it pains to see that here we are struggling to keep people alive. And on the other hand, it just seems that no one cares sometimes.
Are you proud to be a doctor, that you can save lives at the end of the day at such a young age? You've been, can you hear me?
Now I can.
Many of you have been thrown into the deep end as young doctors. Is this a moment therefore for you of a trial by fire for lots of young doctors like you, that you never anticipated when you became a doctor, that this is what you'd have to do? Or do you feel a sense of pride today that you're saving lives?
I think we were not pushed in. I think we did this by choice. Obviously, this was not something we anticipated, but I think we take great pride in being able to offer service to the people when they really need us. So it's definitely, I don't think any of us repent getting into medicine or being where we are. But I really hope with whatever we have, we are able to do the best we can and times just improve now. I mean, we really want this to get over soon. We've all been waiting for, those days that were pre-COVID times.
Very quickly, 30 seconds, what would you have, what is your final word to the citizens of this country as a young doctor?
We are not asking for too much. All that we are asking for is please mask up. The vaccination drive is going to be open for everyone above 18. There is no need to be hesitant. We've seen the benefits of the vaccine in the second wave. Those who've been vaccinated for 2 doses are not getting to the hospital or are not dying. So we've seen the benefits of the vaccine. And in this extreme scenario where ICU beds are in shortage, I would really request people to only go to the hospital when you really need to. Do not panic and use up beds that are not meant for you. Because every time you're in a bed that was not meant for you, please remember there's someone else dying outside.
How many hours have you got to sleep in the last few weeks? How many hours do you get to sleep?
I don't think none of us are thinking about sleep and food. We do, but we honestly do get our breaks because, how will we survive if we don't sleep? But yeah, it has been very hectic. Our sleep is interrupted by calls from the ICU or, frantic calls from relatives or friends. But we hope it's only a matter of another few weeks or months. We really don't want to see this forever.
None of us want to see this forever. I want to, on behalf of all of us at the channel, our viewers, salute you and all the COVID warriors. Thank you very much and stay strong, and thank you above all else. So thank you, Dr. Gilada, for joining me on the show.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.